Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at, ladies and gents. I am Kura Isagami, and welcome back to class with my remade Robattle 101 studies. It's in this specialized playlist that I break down the nitty-gritty and the finer details of just what makes Medarot S tick with all its mechanics, ranging from how to raise parts to different kinds of natures, and everything else in between that goes and requires in running the game and how to play it and understand it. This tutorial in particular, or rather my remade tutorial, is about how to ascend parts. What goes into making a strong part stronger, or what goes into investing in a part to bring out its fullest potential. That's what you're going to find in this study, with some updated source material, some new mechanics to be covered, and hopefully not nearly as long as the original tutorial was. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right in and start with what exactly goes into ascending a part. As I said, what it does allow is a higher level limit, such as higher stats, higher power, success, and so on. It does also mean that if there's any passive bonuses, such as Metaforce Charge or CG requirement, or passive pierce damage, or anything of the like, ascending a part allows you a much easier time to be able to unlock those potentials and passives, or make them even lower. For instance, a 5-star part will have a 30% CG capacity on most parts, whereas at base 3-star it's instead of 50 or even 60%, which is harder to obtain. In addition to this, it also means that when you raise parts to 5-star, more often than not, it will also allow it to unlock pierce damage if it is capable of it. Whereas if it were anything else, it would just unlock the extra stat bonuses as mentioned. Now, parts go up from rank 1 to 6-star as of the January 18th, 2024 update, and those level caps are as you see here. Level 1 parts will cap at level 30, rank 2 parts at level 45, 3 stars at 60, 4 stars at 75, and 5-star at 90. And with the new 6-star Ascension that is now available to us, we can now fully cap a part up to a full capped level 100 spec. Now, I actually do go into just a little bit more detail on what actually involves in that 90 to 100 jump, because that was actually a pretty interesting point of discussion when it first came out. But I am getting ahead of myself, and I will cover that in due time. Now, starting, of course, is what you need, because there are a lot of materials and sources that are required in order to ascend the part at pretty much at any variety and level. The minimum requirement that you need, of course, is a set of ROMs, which is that number you see there at the 2000 of 2000, which is usually collected farming from, say, dupes or collecting from events. You also need Cyplasium, and you also need a set of NFRP chips of varying levels and variety. Now, these are the minimum base requirements, of course, aside from the meta coin limit that also allows you to ascend, and the price and cost of resources and what is required will rank based on how far into the Ascension you go. Now, also from a previous update, they did also allow us a chance to burst update or burst ascend a part all the way up as high as we can. So that means if you have a base 1-star part and the materials on hand, you can push it straight up to level 100 all the way. Not necessarily recommended, but it is officially available to you, but it is also good to know what resources are required. Now, going forward though, how do you get these materials though is the other big question a lot of people have, especially if you are a new player, and a lot of those resources are kind of starting to scratch your head a little bit. That's 100% fine, don't worry about it. The first material you're going to need are ROMs and Cyplasium, and these are probably going to be the hardest materials of the bunch to collect. Now, Cyplasium comes in two varieties of purple and blue. Blue being the most common, and purple Cyplasium is going to be your liquid gold in this instance. You can earn that by collecting duplicate parts from the Gacha banner of anything of 3-star variety and higher primarily, sometimes 2-star as well. So even if you fail at a perfect 10 roll and you don't get anything you want, at least you get the Cyplasium on hand that you can use to ascend something that has been waiting on that back burner. In this same vein, you can also obtain ROMs as well that you can use to pump toward parts that you want to raise. However, unlike Cyplasium, ROMs can also be earned in a number of other methods, primarily through the use of events, such as in an event store or milestone events, depending on the particular one going on. You can also redeem it in some cases, or in some super invasions, they do also offer it as another reward. So, out of the two rarer materials you'll see here, ROMs are probably going to be the easiest to collect in particular. Now, however, with the blue Cyplasium, as I do touch on that as well, that one, however, is farmable, so do make sure that you touch base on that one as well to raise your 1 to 2 star parts so that you can save on your purple. The next material you're going to need are the NFRP chips. Now, these are probably going to be the easiest materials to obtain because these can be indefinitely farmed. They come in 3 varieties of gold, silver, and bronze, and you will ultimately need some of each variety to fully cap a part as high as you can get it. Now, of course, if you're starting from the lowest variety, you will start with commonly bronze. Next variety up, you will get to silver and bronze, and so on and so forth. But these can be farmed through daily dungeons that will be available and cycle through the week, or if you are on the Meta Pass or Robattle Pass subscription, these will be open to you basically anytime to farm as freely as you please. So one other thing to pay attention to is how much goes into each part, and kind of study up on that as you go. Because if you find yourself not in need of anything in particular or anything important when you're doing your dailies, these are generally something you can never go wrong with setting to auto farm just so you can burn all that energy. Lastly, the other really big element you're going to need, and it's not 100% certain how rare this material is going to be, but it is one that you definitely want to make sure you don't waste freely, and that is the new NFRP S chips, which were officially released with the January 18th, 2024 update. This is the most important element needed if you want to ascend a part from 5 star to 6 star, and obtain even higher stat boost and a permanent third chip slot for any power-up chips that you choose to apply to that said part. Now, how you earn these is actually going to be relatively easy, not as commonly as regular events, but definitely a lot easier than Cyplasium or ROMs. These you can obtain thus far from the higher difficulty super invasions that just recently started coming out as of that patch. They will also be handing those out in events going forward very commonly, and you can also earn them through the meta search mechanic that was also implemented with that same patch. So this is going to be a relatively easy and somewhat common resource to obtain, but just because it is common, it is going to be expensive to raise parts to 6 star, so do make sure that you hold on to this and not blow it on every part you get just because you have the resources on hand to raise it to 6 star. Now, in terms of what you need, however, here's the hard brass and the nitty-gritty numbers on what exactly you need for each Ascension. For going from 1 to 2 star, you will need 20 blue Cyplasium, 25 ROMs, 10 bronze chips, and 50,000 meta coins. So very easy to obtain, not overly expensive. Going from 2 to 3 star will be 30 blue Cyplasium, 100 ROMs, 10 silver, 25 bronze, and 100,000 credits. So again, not too terrible, and generally 3 star capping at that level 60 is for the most part where you want to try to cap all the parts if you don't plan to use them super often, but want to keep them on the back burner as a just in case you might need them to fill in a slot. Now, for parts that you plan to use more commonly, if you go from 3 to 4, you will not need to start pulling into your purple Cyplasium, as the blue is only used for raising parts 1 to 3 star. But going from 3 to 4, you will need 20 purple Cyplasium, 500 ROMs, 10 gold chips, 25 silver chips, 50 bronze chips, and 500,000 credits. So here's where it starts really getting resource heavy. Going from 4 star to 5 star will be probably the most expensive if you choose to stop there, costing you a total of 30 purple Cyplasium, 1,000 ROMs, 25 gold, 50 silver, 100 bronze, and of course 1 million credits. So this is the most common place you're going to stop at if you want to leave your parts at a good enough point you can pretty much pull up for it and use it any time and have a very consistent and reliable performance. Anything you choose not to use as heavily, you can drop down to 3 or 4 star and really not have to worry about it too much. Now, for the parts that you choose to really push for and absolutely pull to the highest capacity, going from 5 to 6 star will be probably the most expensive investment that you'll see here, costing you a total of 50 additional purple Cyplasium, 2,000 ROMs, 300 NFRP S chips, 150 gold, 75 silver, 35 bronze, and of course 2 million credits. So these are for the parts that you really want to make sure that and know for a fact that you're going to use, because these are going to be the heaviest investment, especially in the rarer materials such as cyclasium or ROMs. It is also worth noting as well as a general note, just for a general rule of thumb and frame of reference, fully capping a base 3-star like a Spotlight set to 5-star will cost you about 200 cyclasium, or roughly about 50 purple per part, minus any other materials that you need. Now, in light of the new 6-star Ascension, a lot of people have started asking, is that 6-star Ascension worth it? And the answer I'm going to give you is, it depends on the part. But, however, what you earn from that is actually a pretty substantial stat boost in some cases, but it's not necessarily going to be a make or break. In particular, as you see here, head and arms will net you a total of about 11 to 12% boost to your armor, about 7% to your success and power, and about 3% to your heat and cool. So really, it's just your armor that's going to get that biggest boost there. For your legs, it's going to give you about the same boost for armor, about 11 to 12%. Same for your melee and your shoot resist, also at about 11 to 12%, evade at 8%, and mobility at about 3%. So as you see here, that extra boost will be nice, especially for the parts that you do absolutely use on hand. But at the same time, don't necessarily feel pressure to push all the parts that you can to 6-star, because unless you have the resources on hand for it, which you absolutely won't if you're starting out fresh, you want to make sure that you save this Ascension for those really, really good parts you have in your library. In particular, a lot of those parts you want to save them for are things that you'll see pretty often or pretty commonly in competitive meta or PvP. Some examples include Frost Shock, or really high mobility legs, or legs with a really good leg ability. One thing to really pay attention to is the fact and reminder that a lot of leg ability stats are often multiplicative, not additive. So that means the higher the base stats are, the higher of a bonus you get when they officially kick in. So do make sure you keep this in mind when you do ascend those legs, and keep them on the front, and keep that at the front of your mind. Now, just some minor closing thoughts on this and how to ascend parts in particular. Use your cyclasium wisely. Like I mentioned earlier, this is essentially your liquid gold, minus the blue, of course. So this is a material that you really want to make sure that you don't waste on parts that you will not use often or even at all, and try to invest in the parts that you'll use either as your primary or even just as some backup parts to have on hand. Allocate it towards things you're going to use, like I said. Blue cyclasium, however, can be farmed once a day, so you can earn that as kind of a steady income towards your lower end parts, and occasionally you can also purchase it in the convenience store. I did also say this, and I will continue to say it because it cannot be emphasized enough: do not ascend any part you have to 6-star. Make sure it is a part that you are going to use, or it is something that can really help you keep that edge in battle. While that extra roughly 3 to 10% per stat for that Ascension may be somewhat negligible at glance, just make sure that you don't use those extra resources foolishly. Lower base parts can be very expensive, so of course base 3-star will have your general range for your resource usage, but parts that start at say 1-star or 2-star will get very expensive to raise. For the most part, leaving these at level 60 is kind of a really good stopping place, but if there are parts on hand that can be really, really good at first glance, that's your opportunity to really kick them up and make sure that you can capitalize on them. A lot of early shields or some fierce battles that are really good, such as Samurai or Aim Flash, can really benefit from capping all the way up because they have really good parts or skills on hand. In early game, as I said, capping at level 60 is usually going to be your best friend. This will be the least heavy on your resources while you're still collecting them, and it still gives you the opportunity to use the parts at a fairly decent midpoint where they're not the most powerful thing there is, but you can still capitalize on them as high as you can for at least the early levels that you're conquering at that point. Take advantage of events as well. They will be handing out things like ROMs and cyclasium or even NFRPS chips very freely during these. So do make sure that you capitalize on every event that's incoming, capitalize on collecting all those resources, and just kind of save and stockpile them if you don't have any immediate use for them right away. This is the friendly rule of thumb: just because you have the resource does not mean you have to use it right away. One other thing to note is just a friendly little tip and piece of advice: you can generally never ever have enough NFRP chips. This includes the regular variety and the S variety, as you can farm them consistently. If you have nothing to do while you finish your dailies and your PvP, you can generally burn the rest of your energy toward this pretty consistently. You can also stockpile it for extra friend points and player EXP in tandem if you just select randos or friends instead of your third unit. And something I noticed is that if you collect all the gold chips, anything that you have in excess that you're not raising right away or don't necessarily need, you can sell the extras in usually bunches of 1 to 5,000 at a time is my recommendation, so that you can really earn some extra cash if you find yourself in a pinch. Not necessarily required, but it is something good to have on hand just as, just to keep in the forefront of your mind. But with all that being said, I do believe that covers the general tutorial on how to ascend parts and absolutely milk the highest variety and highest potential you can of all the parts you use, from the lowest variety up to the highest 6-star Ascension. But with that being said, if you'd like to know more, you can follow us on Facebook at the Medarot News Network page and the Metabots Forever community on there. You can also join us on Discord in the link provided and in the comments below to keep an even closer ear to the ground on the action. That includes any contests, weekly announcements, merchandise, weekly episodes, and so on. The Discord's the first place you're going to hear it before it goes anywhere else. You can also reach out to me personally on Twitter at IsagamiKura, so if you have any questions or feedback or comments, or would love just to stop in and say hello, I leave my DMs open for that very reason, and if you have any suggestions on anything else I could cover or recover in my remade Robattle tutorials playlist, definitely reach out to me with those suggestions and I'll see what I could do. But with all that being said, as always, I do appreciate you all for stopping by just as you always do. And until next time, this is your host, Kura Isagami of the Medarot News Network, signing out.